Please stop thinking short-term, people, if you are in fact going to use Bitcoin as merely a store of value. But wake up a little bit and realize that unless we use these coins and tokens as transactions, as functional things in the real world which change our lives, nothing will change. We'll have the same economy we have now, only it will simply be electronic.
Humans of Bitcoin is part of the Bitcoin.com podcast network. Learn about Bitcoin, create a wallet, and buy your first Satoshis all at Bitcoin.com.
Hello and welcome to Humans of Bitcoin. This is Matt Aaron. John McAfee is on the show today. Now, you've probably read quite a few things about John McAfee, and we're going to talk about a lot of those things in the show today. He's very famous for his time in Belize and then being accused of murder and having to run away from the corrupt government of Belize through Central America. And recently he's gotten into Bitcoin and to cryptocurrencies in general. While some of the things he may say in the media, like if Bitcoin is not at $1 million by the end of 2020, I'll eat my own penis. A lot of people interpret those things as, hey, this guy is crazy. You know, he's lived a life of civil disobedience. He's been a very successful entrepreneur, and I would encourage you to have an open mind. The reason people do things may be to get a platform to communicate more important messages. And one thing that McAfee has been very successful at is staying relevant. You know, he's 73 years old now and still has a large following. But I really enjoyed speaking to him. There's no doubt in my mind that he has a lot of wisdom to offer. And of course, entertaining stories. Enjoy the show. John McAfee, welcome to the Humans of Bitcoin podcast.
Thanks for inviting me, sir.
Yeah, and John, so you just turned 73 a week ago. What did you do?
I had a week of birthday.
Oh, a week-long party.
I stepped away from everything and just drank, slept, watched television, took walks, and enjoyed myself.
Amazing. With so many things going on, you were able to disconnect from phone and email?
Well, Jimmy Watson, who's the CEO, has pretty much taken over all the day-to-day management. I just pretend to do work every day. But in reality, I merely do keynotes and talk to the media, and that's it.
That's cool. And what country are you in right now?
I'm at home on the Outer Banks of North Carolina. It's an island off the coast of the U.S., you know, about 100 miles away from the coastline. So we're surrounded by water. I love water. We go boating and jet skiing or just dip our feet in it.
Amazing, man. Yeah, you definitely live life. I noticed that on the Coinsbank cruise. And relating this back to Bitcoin, I'm curious, you know, 6 years ago now, a little less than 6 years ago, you were on the run from the Belize government. And so I'm curious, that was 2012. Were you using Bitcoin at this time?
No, I was not. I was aware of it. Some of my friends had forced me to read the Satoshi white paper. I saw the beauty in it. But living in the chaos I was in Belize, no, I did not actually use Bitcoin at that point.
Gotcha. And when was that? When did you start, you know, really buying and using Bitcoin?
2014.
Okay, 2014. And tell me about it.
Basically, I used Bitcoin to buy things from the dark web because that was the currency of the dark web back then. And it was convenient, didn't have to go to the bank, and, you know, there were no records. So it was, you know, something that I used simply as a currency. I had no intention or even thought that it could be an investment.
Gotcha. And at what point did you think it could be an investment?
Probably in early 2016. But for me, cryptocurrencies as an investment, it's an oxymoron. It's because cryptocurrencies are designed to change the world, not to inflate your pocket, although I have no problem with people inflating their pockets. But it's become the prime concern now. It's not the utility of the token or the coin. It's how much is it going to make me in the next 6 months or 12 months or 18 months. And that's a tragedy.
For sure, for sure. And I think there's a lot of misunderstanding here, especially people that just got involved last year and they saw this gigantic bull run, but the killer app is cash, using as currency. Listeners, really quick, let me just tell you who Jihan Wu is. He's arguably one of the most important people in the business world in general. I mean, he is the head of Bitmain, which makes mining equipment and also mines itself They had $1.1 billion of profit in the first half of 2018 and are currently doing an IPO out of Hong Kong. He also translated Satoshi's white paper from English to Mandarin. I mention all this to give some context for the involvement of Jihan in crypto, who we're going to talk about for the next few minutes. All right, back to the show. So I'm curious, you've mentioned Jihan Wu and Roger Ver, two of the smartest people you've ever met. And obviously Jihan is incredibly successful with Bitmain, maybe the most successful entrepreneur in the crypto space. But do you have any stories or conversations or things he's said that demonstrate his intelligence?
Well, he's probably the most humble man I ever met. I first met him when I did the Chinese National Security Conference. I keynoted that in Beijing in 2017. And that's when I first met Jihan. And he came with a remarkable present for me, a solid gold Bitcoin. And he was wearing ordinary clothes, an open collar shirt. He was not in any way an indication of who he really was. Just an ordinary citizen, polite. He listened carefully. When he spoke carefully. I was amazed at the very beginning, knowing who he was and the power that he has. And when you say probably the most powerful man, no, please God, he has never sold a single Bitcoin, and he has been the largest miner since the beginning. He is the only manufacturer of any reasonable Bitcoin mining machine, and is into everything else in the ASIC processing world. So he's obviously one of the wealthiest men on the planet, and certainly the most powerful within China.
Yeah, I know he translated the Bitcoin white paper into Chinese. You also mentioned on another podcast that you believe, or maybe he said this to you, I've never seen him say this, but again, I haven't followed Jihan for so long, that his real end game or goal or vision is with artificial intelligence and blockchain. And that's really interesting to me. Now, we have a lot of non-technical listeners on this podcast. So, just for my mom or grandma listening to the show, how would you explain Jihan's vision and what maybe concerns you about it?
Why don't we start with Ethereum's smart contract, for example? Now, how would you make the smart contract smarter? Make it intelligent. Make it as intelligent as you. Jihan has developed, and please God, I'm sure he has released this information, the world's first ASIC, AI machine, meaning that the instruction set, hardwired, hard-coded into that machine, is all the instructions necessary to create any type of artificial intelligence that you like. This is going to revolutionize the world, and this is his dream. Bitcoin was merely a stepping stone for him. Get a few $1 billion that he could then sink into what his real dream was, which is artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence applied to the blockchain will revolutionize this world in ways you cannot imagine.
Okay, and in ways we can't imagine, but I guess I'm still going to ask you for an example, like ground that idea with something that we can think about.
All right, well, let's assume that we want to know the character of an individual. Through artificial intelligence and through the blockchain, which has a record, or will have eventually, of most of that person's interactions with other people. The ASIC AI machine is fast enough to go through the entire blockchain, find everything related to any of his wallets, any of his contracts, how they were prosecuted, how they ended up, and can say, we're going to give this guy a very low score. He generally seems to be, self-centered, dishonest, and so on. Well, you can't do that without some degree of AI. Now start with that and imagine growing that into this massive flower of AI.
Wow. Okay. So I think Jihan Wu is going to be one of the most famous people. And I don't mean fame as just, Kardashian fame, but most influential people of the 21st century, if that comes to fruition.
He's going to be the equivalent of Isaac Newton.
Wow.
Hundreds of years from now, they will point to Jihan as the mastermind of the flowering of the blockchain.
And what about Roger? When did you meet Roger Ver?
I think I met Roger. Well, actually, I met Roger at the same time, I think. I think he was at the National. No, he was not. I met him a few months later. When I said, I don't think I ever said Roger was one of the smartest men I ever met. Roger is not stupid by any stretch of the imagination. Jihan is one of the smartest men I've ever met. Roger is one of the most charismatic. Now, when I met Roger for the first time, it was at a dinner. Oh, I was with Jihan. It was Jihan, Roger, and myself. And it was somebody's birthday. Maybe it was mine. In any case, Roger did not impress me in the least. Quiet, seemed a little withdrawn. I did not understand how he reached the level of limelight that he's achieved. Then last year at the Hong Kong conference, it was supposed to be in Beijing, but China then outlawed cryptocurrency at that time. So we moved to Hong Kong. I saw him speak. Good God Almighty, that man's charisma on stage is astonishing. He deftly handles all of the booze and the tomatoes that are thrown at him. Good. So now I understand. Roger is a showman. He is charismatic beyond belief.
And so, listen, I realize there's quotes from you, purported quotes from you, things that are said about you that may or may not be true. So some of the information that I have here, it may not be accurate. Feel free to correct me. But there's a couple interesting things, some quotes. I mean, the first one is you talking about the S.E.C. being out of hand and no longer representing American values or the American people, and that it has a pyramidal power system that is corrupt at the core. And I believe that you were in some type of trouble with the S.E.C. this year. And can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, I've had two public companies, both on the New York, one on the NASDAQ, one on the New York Stock Exchange. McAfee was on NASDAQ, MGT on the New York Stock Exchange. So obviously, as CEOs of both companies, I had to deal with the S.E.C. Let me give you an example of how they work. At my last company, I'm very arrogant and I do not hide my disrespect and displeasure with parts of my government. So in meetings with the S.E.C., I treat them like I actually feel. You guys are idiots, and I'm sorry. The world would be a better place without you. So I made enemies. What happened is the S.E.C. served my company, MGT, with a subpoena. Now, the S.E.C. rules state that I may not, under any circumstances, disclose the contents of the subpoena. That's illegal here. However, the subpoena had nothing to do with me, nothing to do with the management of MGT, nothing to do with the actions of MGT. It had to do with a shareholder of MGT some 10 years previously. So the fact that I was served with a subpoena, we got delisted from the New York Stock Exchange because the assumption is we've done something wrong. But a subpoena doesn't have to subpoena for anything about you or the company. It can be anything. So they basically punished me and the company. Their job is to protect stockholders. The stock went from $5 to $1. Hundreds of millions of dollars and tens of thousands of stockholders lost this money because the S.E.C. did not like me. Now, finally, I said, fuck it. And I just disclosed the content illegally. I haven't been charged. No one's come after me yet for it. But I just wanted to show the world what nightmarishly corrupt people run these agencies within the U.S. government. Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. The S.E.C. has absolute power in the economy of America, and actually the economy of the world. You think they won't reach out and try to grab somebody from a country that has, an arrangement for grabbing people in your country that have done something in ours? Yes, they will do this. It's called extradition.
Okay, so two follow-up questions there and one comment. One is I admire that you do that because obviously financially it may not benefit you, but way to speak out about the things that are happening. My first question for you, John, is I've heard some people in the ICO space say, hey, listen, it doesn't matter if the S.E.C. calls it a security token. We just won't operate in the United States. But it seems like the S.E.C. has a worldwide reach, so they could cause problems for people that launch tokens that the S.E.C. doesn't like.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, the S.E.C. has issued subpoenas to ICOs that I was cooperating with last year, wanting information about me in foreign countries.
Yeah, and you've seen a lot of these like information acts, quote unquote freedom information acts, where there's just a huge reach of the U.S. government to anyone, anywhere. And John, so the headline today I saw that, John McAfee is 73, very stoned and running for president. Obviously, that's the title of the article. But the point is, you're running for president. If you were elected president, assuming that's correct, what would you do with SEC?
Well, here's the thing. I'm not going to be elected president. Anybody in their right mind would know this. Here's what I believe. Presidents, once they take office, become puppets in the hands of thousands of people. They no longer are capable of doing what they said they were going to do. Look at all the past presidents. How many of them did what they said? Obama did come out with Obamacare, but that's being unwound. They don't change anything. What changes is the process. The process of electing a president changes America. Because for 18 months, people get to watch people with ideas they may not have thought of, people with opinions, epiphanies, with perceptions that are totally unique, and they get to take the stage. Whether they win or not is not the point. Do the people listen to them while they're talking? That's the point. So I want the stage now at this time so that I can promote the blockchain, cryptocurrency, and a permissionless society, which we can bring about if we have the will and the desire. That's why I'm running for president. I'm not going to win. Good God Almighty. You know, even in the last election, when people said, Mr. McAfee, when you take office, what are you doing? I'm not going to take office. People ask me a reasonable fucking question, please. I'm not going to take office. I am sure as fuck going to run, and people are going to listen. And when I ran in 2016, I got the national stage for quite a while. That was great. I got to talk about security, about cyber security. That was my big thing back then. I changed the face of cyber security through that 18-month process.
Gotcha. And you mentioned the security conference in China. You go to various conferences around the world and you speak and you act with people. I mean, I would say you're in a variety of social circles, you know, whether it's politicians, tech entrepreneurs, people in smaller countries, US and Europe. What would you say the mood around Bitcoin is today in all these social circles?
Well, we're in what's called a bear market. And keep in mind, we have fallaciously decided that making money is the purpose of the blockchain. Well, if that's the case, then we're going to have chaos. And there is chaos. Every country has a different opinion. Governments have a different opinion, although generally governments hate it. They hate the anonymity, even though there's not much with Bitcoin. With coins like Monero, there's tremendous anonymity. It's impossible to try to unwind somebody's transaction or to find out who the transactors were. So, of course, they're scared. The people are generally down now. I lost a lot of money. I lost half of my money. No, you didn't lose a fucking thing unless you irrationally sold. Please God, look, 18 months, you take any 18-month period of Bitcoin. It has always grown, always, and it always will. Please stop thinking short-term, people, if you are, in fact, going to use Bitcoin as merely a store of value. But wake up a little bit and realize that unless we use these coins and tokens as transactions, as functional things in the real world which change our lives, nothing will change. We'll have the same economy we have now, only it will simply be electronic.
Gotcha. So just to clarify, basically, if this whole store of value thing, if people just invest as a store of value and it's not used as currency, nothing's going to change.
Nothing, of course, it can't change. We've merely taken the gold standard and made it the Bitcoin standard. Well, fuck that. No, sir.
Now, a couple more things. John, so I believe this year, I know that sometimes you've been paid to promote on tweets certain ICOs that you believe in. And apparently you received death threats for promoting an ICO. I mean, they're obviously wacky people. Did you feel scared at all? What happened there?
I haven't received any death threats from promoting ICOs. I received death threats from a Nigerian scamming group that came out with something called the FINA coin. Now, they were the best I've ever seen. I even talked to their, quote, head developer in London, one of the brightest programmers I've ever met. That fucker was paid. He didn't work for the company, didn't even know what the fuck they were doing except at the highest level. And so I bought into it. As soon as I found out it was a scam, I went straight to Twitter and said, people, I made a fucking mistake. I'm so sorry. Here's the truth. Those people, fuck yes, did they give me death threats? Absolutely. We were talking about Nigerian, high-level scam organizations that they all carry fucking guns and they're terrorists. So yes, I got death threats from those people. However, it did not deter me and I did not backpedal, which they demanded.
Okay, so it was basically for calling out an ICO scam. Got it. And on the Coinsbank cruise, just 2.5 weeks ago, you announced your alliance. I was there with Coinbene and some others. And it seems that you had a falling out, or maybe you were ripped off by HitBTC. Is that correct?
It wasn't. I was never ripped off by HitBTC. We've received thousands of complaints from people. I have a lot of followers, and I read and listen to everybody, or somebody in the company does. And it became really clear. Listen, it's obvious that many of these exchanges are criminal organizations. I don't care about that. I don't care what they do with their profits. I don't care what they're buying or what they're peddling, or who they're planning to assassinate. Not my business. But it is my business if they're ripping off the clients. Who are the clients? Us, the crypto community. Now go ahead and do what you want with your profits. But for God's sake, treat your users as people and treat them honestly. This is all I'm asking. That's all I'm asking. Some of these exchanges, because they are in fact criminal, you'll go, well, who cares? We'll just rip off the world. We're going to assassinate so-and-so or sell drugs. And why should we bother with our customers? That I will not tolerate. And that is what HitBTC is doing.
Gotcha. Okay. So it was really sticking up for your followers and people you know about HitBTC exchanges.
Let me explain something here. We're no longer just focusing on HitBTC. Coinbase has said, if anyone, any company, any foundation that has coins on any exchange that they believe is corrupt, if you will drop that exchange, they will accept you for free. I think this is much better than picking on one company out of many dozens that are ripping off their users. So we're going to stop saying names and just let the users decide. You're getting ripped off? Coinbase will take you.
So, the coins, the ICOs themselves, they can delist on whatever exchange is malicious or has bad intent.
Coinbase is one of the largest. They do a better job. They have offices in 14 countries. They're an upstanding company. We have audited them thoroughly.
Amazing. And John, you also mentioned this in another podcast, I believe, about the sheep, the followers, people following whatever mainstream media and the government says. You mentioned you don't have maybe personal fear, whether it's fear of death, et cetera, but you're scared of like the sheep. Can you elaborate on that?
I'm scared of the sheep? Well, yeah, I'm scared of the sheep because it's the sheep that ultimately end up with the power. They get to vote our politicians in. It's the masses, unfortunately, that have the power but do not have the will to use it appropriately. That's why I'm afraid. I want the sheep to wake up just a little bit. Please, God, see the world you're in. We are all fucking slaves to a system that has been evolving for 1,000 years. And that is the system of power at the top, controlling the powerless at the bottom. I want to take that power at the top and distribute it evenly among those at the bottom. And let's see what happens to that world. Let's see what happens in that world. I promise you, it'll be a world where more people are awake, more people take responsibility for themselves, and it will be a world of total freedom.
That's interesting because obviously the blockchain provides a ledger, a record, and transparency, and at the same time, responsibility, like you just mentioned.
We need legislation against these scammers who go, send me 1/10 of a Bitcoin and I'll send you a full Bitcoin. Please, God, nobody gives away money to strangers for free. Anybody who believes that, do you think legislation is going to help them? It may help them in that area, but then they'll go and they'll give their money to some street vendor for flour thinking it's cocaine or something. You can't help these people. You can't. Legislation does nothing more than give us a least common denominator in which we live. Screw that. Let people take responsibility for themselves. Let them lose their entire life savings. That will teach them something. Legislation will not.
For sure. And under the facade of trying to, quote unquote, protect people, whether it's the S.E.C. or other coalitions, they actually hurt these people because they don't learn from their mistakes because they get bailed out. The whole reason, 2008, the bailout that Bitcoin started. So yeah, John, just finishing up here, I'm just curious, you mentioned you started using Bitcoin on dark web. What types of things were you buying?
It was the dark web. That would be a very, very private question, wouldn't it? Maybe drugs, maybe leopards from Africa. I mean, anything that either correctly or incorrectly is deemed not appropriate, you can get on the dark web. I was not hunting for hitmen to shoot people, I'll tell you that. Okay, but yes, all the goods and services which are questionable and which if you want to buy them and you don't want to answer questions, you buy them with a cryptocurrency.
Gotcha. Well, John, finishing off here, this is just from some of the listeners of the show want to know, you're still, confident. You have your declaration that like the end of 2020, you'll eat your penis if Bitcoin is not at $1 million. That's correct.
Absolutely. And I will keep to that. I'll never have to eat my penis. I've got over 2 years, I promise you. Keep in mind that as cryptocurrency grows, fiat currencies decrease in value. So add the devaluation aspect into that. Add the fact that Bitcoin consistently has grown over every 18-month period. Add to that the fact that no matter what people are saying, cryptocurrency is growing in use, not just for people holding to make a profit, but for using it, for purchases. You can buy real estate now, high-end real estate. You can get any car in the world with Bitcoin or Ethereum, sometimes others, even Monero. There's nothing you cannot buy, well, except food. But even then, you can get some items, all right, caviar. So it's going to become so mainstream. And only 21 million coins. Run the numbers, sir.
For sure. There's so many lost Bitcoins as well. But yeah, I mean, makes sense. And then, okay, one quick final question here. You mentioned Monero a couple of times. The privacy coins going forward, like Monero and Zcash, Pivx, etc. Do you think they will stick around and be around 10, 20 years from now?
Privacy coins or Bitcoin?
The privacy coins, like Monero and Zcash.
Let me ask you a question, and the same question to everybody who's listening. With Bitcoin or Ethereum, once you have transacted anything with your wallet, the person you transacted with can look at your wallet, see how much is in there, see how much you're spending, see which wallet it's going to, see how much you've received. Now, if your bank provided that information to anybody who wanted it, would you be happy with your bank? I don't think so. With privacy coins, with Monero, and I keep saying Monero was the first and I still think the best. Certainly the one used most on the dark web now, because no one uses Bitcoin anymore. It's all Monero. Nobody can see anything. You can give them your wallet and they can see jack shit about what's in yours. They don't know who you are, where you came from. People looking at it don't know what you bought, who you bought it from, or what you sold, or who you sold it to. Tell me, which one would you choose in the end? See, I think Bitcoin will be with us forever. It's the grandfather. It will be the gold standard. I don't mind if people want to store Bitcoin for value because it will increase. We all know that. So people are going to have wallets with Bitcoin, just like you have gold in safe deposit boxes in banks, if you're smart.
Right on. Well, hey, John, I really appreciate your time today. I know a lot of people that listen to this show look up to you and admire and follow you on Twitter. So thanks so much, man. And best of luck going forward in this really amazing crypto blockchain revolution.
Well, thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
This is Blake Moore, e-commerce manager at Bitcoin.com, and you are listening to the Bitcoin.com podcast network. For all things Bitcoin, wallet, mining, news, events, and more, head over to Bitcoin.com.
Hey, it's me again. What did you think? I personally felt like he had some deep insights here and is standing up for a better future. I was truly inspired. The death threats from Nigeria, sticking up to the S.E.C, it seems like his heart is in the right place. As always, please subscribe to Humans of Bitcoin. Go to podcast.bitcoin.com to check out our other shows as well. And thanks so much for listening. Hope to see you next week.